Who should win the Heisman, Mike?
So I'd say this, like, I don't actually know the rules on if I'm supposed to say who I'm going to vote for or not. And I haven't voted yet. I like to wait till the end of conference championship weekend, get the full body and all of this.
You're going to vote for.
And I'm not going to. But I will say this. When you look at the board right now, I'm glad Aidan Hutchinson's name is up there because as we've talked about this, Bryce Young is going to be the overwhelming favorite. You have a Heisman moment like that pitch play yesterday, like so many of his off-the-wall stuff. The weekend, all our eyes are on it. You're going to have a good shot. I'm glad Aidan Hutchinson's name's getting brought up because we've had the Jordan Davis conversation all year long as the point of the spear on that Georgia defense. Aidan Hutchinson had, 14 pressures against Ohio State? He was at his best when his best was demanded of him. Like, he has been insane. Fitz talked about all the money he's going to be making. That's a guy that probably could and should work his way to New York if we're going to send a defensive player this year.
Well, I think this is a great year to send a defensive player because it's not a clear-cut, case for so many players. And I keep looking at Aidan. And you're right. We came in, even a month ago, everybody was convinced Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon was clearly going to be the number one pick in the draft. I was listening to Mel Kiper a couple of days ago, and he was like, I don't know. Hutchinson, you look at the body of work against really good competition and what he's done in huge games. I mean, it's hard not to look at that kid and say, man, he is getting himself paid. And to think of what he did at Ohio State.
By the way, I can't help but look at him because he is the same skin tone as me. Wears number 97, plays with tremendous motor and hand skill. Like, he is the Marvel's what-if version of the Bosas if they had gone to Michigan instead of Ohio State. Like, I just cannot get away from that when I watch him on tape. I try and avoid it, especially, like, comparisons that, like, skew along racial lines, but my God, it's there.
So I want you guys to all watch the Heisman Show on December 11th with myself and Scooby Mageza because we will be leading into the Heisman ceremony.
That's a plug.
Okay, so there was a woman yesterday. I was leaving the SEC championship, and there was a woman who was with two very nice people, and she was like, oh my gosh, you do the Heisman Show. And I was like, yes, I do. And she was like, this is Bryce Young's parents. Oh. And I was like, oh. And then I sat there and told them all the reasons their son was going to win the Heisman. And I go, but don't listen to me because I don't actually know. But so for my sake, I do hope that Bryce Young wins, not only obviously because, I told his parents that he would, but because the kid is he's a redshirt freshman. And he is so incredibly poised and just when you watch him, it's like, how are you so young, literally young, and playing at the level that he's playing? Like, he is literally commanding that offense in a way that I feel like a redshirt freshman, when you think about how young he is, I don't really expect that kind of poise and command to be coming out of such a young kid.
Yeah, and body control.
Right.
The amount of times he's able to keep his balance when it looks like he's falling and just pull himself back up. Should be noted, he's not eligible for the draft this year. So I think that's
exactly.
And I've talked to coaches before around the NFL that'll tell you they scout quarterbacks in 2-year bunches. So anybody that's in the quarterback market right now that doesn't know where their team's going to be is looking at it saying, I don't want to reach for a quarterback because Bryce is coming out. There's going to be a movement for Bryce Young. You guys know that I'm a lover of chaos. And I said it a second ago. I'll say it again. If I had the opportunity to make a genie wish come true, I would put Hutchinson in as the Heisman winner. And not because Bryce Young didn't do anything incredible, but because of how the conversation specifically around Michigan has changed over the course of the last month, due such in large part to his play. And you're watching some highlights here with his explosiveness off the edge. But if you go back and watch the Ohio State game, his ability to disguise where he's coming from and get through the line at any point is really incredible. And even when Ohio State was putting everything, there were a couple of plays where Stroud moved the entire help to one side just to try and get through. And Hutchinson was like, cool, I'm still going to get to your face. I'm a lover of chaos. And this year, without a clear cut all year long, wow, this guy has been it. The lover of defense for me wants it to be, This is
you
the
don't
same.
think Bryce Young has been a clear cut
When it was 10-10 with a minute left, we weren't saying against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and that offense had looked putrid. We weren't saying that Bryce Young was a Heisman winner. Then he drives 95 yards, and we're like, this is his Heisman moment.
Exactly.
I think he's had enough of those. I think to Christine's point, he has been poised and consistent for the vast majority of this year. I just had to go and remind myself, 43 touchdowns against 4 interceptions for the player who was the question mark coming into this year. When we looked at everyone predicting Alabama might take a step back, might lose 2 games this season, a lot of it was predicated on, hey, maybe they finally miss now in this modern era on quarterback. How do you follow up Tua and Mac Jones back to back with Bryce Young, who does not fit the profile, even amongst with Tua as his peer. I mean, Bryce Young is, what, 6 foot, $190, soaking wet? Like, that is not a big player in a conference that can eat you alive. And he has gone out there and looked like he's playing football, seeing zeros and ones everywhere.
Exactly.
But to your point, the first 3 weeks, we were like, oh, maybe this guy's not it. And then the Iron Bowl, we're like, maybe maybe he's struggling.
I don't think the Iron Bowl is when we were like, oh, is Bryce Young even good? Like, he's
No, it was never, is he even good? It was, is anybody, a week ago, it was, is anybody going to step up and claim the Heisman?
I feel like I feel like Bryce Young was always the front runner. It was, is anybody else going to challenge Bryce Young at that #1 spot?
Yeah, and I will say this. I think we've had opportunities along the way. I think Kenny Pickett from Pitt has a realistic chance to wind up in New York. He's been sensational all year, played his way off draft boards. I think Matt Corral, had it not been, certainly the loss to Alabama didn't help in the head-to-head there. He ended up pretty banged up in the middle of the year. I think dealt with injuries on both ankles. He's a guy that, like, if you're looking and talking about this word kind of like an MVP of value, Matt Corral as valuable or more valuable to his team than anyone in the country. So those are all guys that could and should be involved.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.